And then did you go through a moment where at first you thought maybe it was kind of cool as a 14-year-old that your dad said, I'm a spy, and you think James Bond, you know, and then compared to, you know, I don't know, as an adult, obviously you started to really grapple with some issues here. So was there a turning point where it kind of stopped being cool and really started being problematic?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, at first it was amazing. I was totally thrilled, and this idea that your father could be James Bond or like James Bond was amazing, and I loved kind of being in on that secret. But of course, the flip side of that is that, you know, once you're in on the secret, you have to keep the secret, and that means, you know, lying. I had to lie to my friends, you know, even some people in my family. And so there were different stories that I had to tell different people at different times, and it was challenging to keep up that illusion. So as I got older, it got a little bit harder. Yeah,
I mean, that's a heavy load for someone to carry when they're just a teenager. And so did you resent your father for that?
I mean, I started to, it got hard to kind of, I didn't know really, you know, how to keep all the stories straight, for one. And then, of course, as I got older, I started to wonder, well, okay, so his job was all about, you know, keeping secrets and lying and manipulation. So, you know, how did that kind of creep over into his personal life and his relationship with me? And when I started to think about those two things, how those two worlds kind of, you know, were superimposed upon each other, then I started to have more serious questions about trust. You know, did I trust him? Did I really know who he was?
And for your father, I mean, this is something that was deeply based on his patriotism too, as to why he wanted to be in the CIA to begin with. But do you feel like, you know, was there ever a moment where you felt that maybe his loyalties lied more with his patriotic duty than it did to his family?
Sure. I think, you know, one of the things about the CIA is that they swear this oath of allegiance. They have to keep secrets. There are things that they will never tell their families or anybody else, and that's fine. But if you're in that world and in that universe, it's, you know, I started to wonder, well, you know, where did I fit into that bigger picture, and were his loyalties to me in conflict maybe with his loyalties to the agency? And there came a time a little bit later when I was an adult where I started to really have doubts about, you know, whether he had told me the whole truth about his past, and whether he had done things that I, you know, wasn't aware of, and maybe that I might not even be very proud of. As it turned out, that wasn't the case, but I definitely had doubts for a while.
And what about, you know, I mean, your mother and your father were divorced. Janet is your stepmother too. I mean, what about the women and the way that that their lives have been affected, the women in your father's life and in your life?
Yeah, well, my mother, my parents, as you said, they divorced. There were many reasons for that, not all of them having to do with the CIA, but I think the subterfuge involved in the deception really did start to get to my mother after a certain point. They would, for instance, make friends in India, and they would go out and have drinks, and it would all seem to be, you know, part of that courtship that you normally go through when you're making friends and so on. And then it would turn out that my father was, you know, actively recruiting these people or trying to recruit them. And so suddenly the world sort of turned upside down, I think, for my mother to a certain extent, because she thought, well, how do I know what's real? How do I know whether these people are really people that could be my friends, or simply potential recruits, or some weird combination of the two? For my father, though, it was sort of easy to compartmentalize and have people be both friends and potential recruits. But again, that goes back to this issue of being able to kind of straddle those psychological lines successfully, and I don't think everybody can do that. You know, the other thing I was going to say is that for me, as a journalist, like Chuck said, it is slightly easier because there's this imperative to just simply go out and get stories and then tell those stories, as opposed to obtaining information and then figuring out what to do with this and how important actually is it, and, you know, where do I, the spy, fit into these other narratives, which is really different.